The coins felt heavy in Emmett's pocket, heavier than they should. $1.37. He'd counted them so many times his fingers hurt, terrified that one might slip through a hole he hadn't noticed disappear into the Texas dust, like everything else good in his life. 77 motorcycles lined the gravel lot outside Grady's Corner Diner, like a wall of chrome and steel. The engines had gone quiet minutes ago, but the heat still shimmered off the metal, and the leather vests hanging on broad backs looked like armor. Emmett stood at the edge of the parking lot, small fingers clutching the coins through worn denim, and tried to remember what Mama had said before the fever made her words slippery. If something bad happens, baby, you go to Grady's. You ask for soup. Someone good will help. Emmett didn't know if these men were good. He knew they were big. He knew their boots made the gravel crunch like breaking bones. He knew that when you're 6 years old and alone, every stranger is a giant deciding whether to step on you or step around you. But Mama needed soup, and soup cost money. And money was something they'd run out of a long time ago, somewhere between the last town and this one. Between the last brews and the fresh ones Emmett tried not to look at when he helped her change the bandages Deputy Brennan said were from being clumsy. Emmett took a breath that tasted like dust and fear and walked toward the diner. The door was heavier than he expected. It took both hands to pull it open, and when he did, a bell chimed above his head, bright and cheerful, like the world wasn't ending. The diner smelled like coffee and bacon and something baking that made his stomach twist with hunger he'd learned to ignore. 77 men turned to look at him, not all at once. That would have been a movie. This was real, so it happened in waves. The ones nearest the door, first conversation dying mid-sentence. Then the ones at the counter, coffee cups pausing halfway to mouths. Then the ones in the back booths, forks scraping to silence against plates. Emmett froze. The door swung shut behind him with a soft thud that sounded like a cell locking. A woman behind the counter name tag reading Jolene had her hand near the phone. Her eyes were wide, the kind of wide that meant she was deciding whether to be scared now or wait 5 more seconds. Her other hand gripped a coffee pot like it might become a weapon. The booth closest to Emmett held the biggest men. 5 of them, leather vests, worn soft with road miles, faces that looked like they'd seen weather and trouble and learned to stare both down. The one in the middle, silver threading through his dark hair, had eyes that tracked Emmett the way a hawk tracks movement in tall grass. Emmett's legs wanted to run. His heart hammered against his ribs like it was trying to escape without him. But Mama was back in room 12, fever climbing, breath rattling, and the hospital wristband on her thin arm said they owed money they'd never have. So Emmett did what Mama taught him. He made himself small. He kept his eyes down. He walked toward the big table like he was supposed to be there, like 6-year-olds walked into rooms full of strangers every day, and it was fine. When he reached the table, he stopped. 5 pairs of eyes looked down at him. Nobody smiled. Nobody frowned. They just waited, and somehow that was worse than anger because Emmett didn't know what it meant. He lifted his hand, opened his small fist, and poured the coins onto the scarred wooden table. They clattered loud in the silence. A quarter bounced, rolled, settled. 3 dimes lay flat, a nickel. The rest pennies, some shiny, some dull, all counted 100 times. Emmett's voice came out smaller than he meant it to. I have $1.37. He swallowed, forced himself to look up at the man in the middle, the one whose eyes hadn't left him since he walked in. Is that enough for soup? The man didn't move, didn't speak. His jaw was tight, a muscle working there like he was chewing words he couldn't say. My mama needs to eat, Emmett added, and hated how his voice cracked on the word mama, hated how young it made his son, hated that he was 6 years old and begging strangers because the one adult who was supposed to help them only made things worse. The silence stretched. Somewhere in the kitchen, something sizzled. A truck rumbled past outside. Jolene still had her hand on the phone. 77 bikers sat in absolute stillness. Then the man in the middle moved. Slow, deliberate. His rough hands slid across the table and covered the coins, not taking them, just stopping them from scattering. Hey, he said. His voice was low, controlled, the kind of voice that didn't need volume to carry weight. What's your name? Emmett's throat felt tight. Emmett? How old are you, Emmett? 6. You here by yourself? Emmett shook his head, then corrected himself because lies made things worse. Kind of. My mama's at the motel. She can't get up. The man's eyes narrowed slightly, not with anger, with focus. What's wrong with her? She's sick. She's real sick. The hospital sent her home because... Emmett's voice dropped to a whisper. Because we don't have money. The man's jaw flexed again. He looked at the coins under his palm like they weighed 1,000 pounds. One of the other men at the table, younger with the scar across his cheek, leaned forward. Kid's got hospital band tan on his wrist. See it? Emmett tugged his sleeve down fast, covering the pale line where the paper bracelet had been before Mama tore it off, said they couldn't afford what came with it. The man in the middle glanced at Emmett's wrist, then back at his face. What's your mama's name? Nora, Emmett said. And it wasn't a lie because that's what she told people to call her now, even though sometimes late at night when the fever made her confused, she called herself something else. Rachel, a name that sounded like crying. Last name, the man asked, and something in his voice changed, sharpened. Emmett hesitated. Mama said don't tell people your last name. Don't let them find you. But this man's eyes weren't mean. They were something else. Something that looked like it hurt. Harper, Emmett whispered. The man went absolutely still, his hand on the coin pressed down like the table might collapse. His eyes stayed locked on Emmett's face, searching for something, and Emmett didn't know what, but it felt important. Harper, the man repeated. Not a question, a word being tested. Emmett nodded. The man took a long breath, the kind Mama took before she had to do something that scared her. Then he slid the coins back toward Emmett, gentle like they might break. You don't need those, he said. Emmett's heart dropped. But the soup? The man reached into his leather vest and pulled out a $20 bill. He set it on the table, then looked up at Jolene, who was still frozen with the coffee pot. 2 bowls of soup, the man said. His voice carried across the diner, calm but absolute. 1 here, 1 to go. Extra crackers. Hot. Jolene stared at him like he'd just spoken a foreign language. Then she looked at Emmett, and something in her face crumpled and rebuilt itself in the space of a breath. Okay, she managed. Okay, honey, coming right up. She turned toward the kitchen, moving fast, like if she slowed down, she'd fall apart. Emmett stood there, coins still in his hand, not understanding. But I have... You keep your money, the man said. Save it for something else. One of the other men at the table, a woman with short dark hair and sharp eyes, spoke for the first time. Her voice was softer than Emmett expected. Emmett, do you want to sit down while we wait for the soup? Emmett shook his head fast. Sitting meant staying. Staying meant Deputy Brennan might see. And if Deputy Brennan saw... The man seemed to understand. He didn't push. Okay, you can stand. What motel is your mama at? Sunrise, Emmett said. Room 12, by the ice machine. The man's face did something complicated. His eyes flicked to the woman with the short hair, and some unspoken thing passed between them. How long has she been sick? The man asked. 3 days, maybe 4. Time got blurry when Mama was too hot to touch, and Emmett had to put wet towels on her forehead and pray she didn't stop breathing while he was asleep. Has she seen a doctor? Emmett nodded. Yesterday, they gave her medicine, but... He stopped. He wasn't supposed to talk about this part. But what? The man asked, and his voice went quieter, the kind of quiet that meant he already knew the answer. They said she has to come back, but she won't. She's scared. Scared of what? Emmett's mouth opened, closed. The truth sat on his tongue like a stone he couldn't swallow and couldn't spit out. The bell above the door chimed. Emmett's whole body went rigid. He knew that sound now, the specific way the bell rang, when someone walked in, slow, taking their time, owning the space before they even spoke. Deputy Hale Brennan stepped into the diner. He was 32 but looked younger, the kind of face that smiled easy and meant nothing. Clean uniform badge catching the fluorescent lighted radio on his belt, crackling with static that sounded like authority. His eyes swept the room, cataloging the bikes outside, the leather vests, inside the tension that had settled like dust. Then his gaze landed on Emmett. His smile widened. Emmett, buddy, what are you doing here? Emmett couldn't speak. His throat closed up, words trapped behind the fear that lived in his chest every time Deputy Brennan appeared, every time that smile promised safety and delivered something else entirely. The man at the table, Emmett still didn't know his name, watched the deputy with the same stillness he'd shown since Emmett walked in. Not aggressive, alert. Brennan crossed the diner boots, clicking on linoleum, and stopped a few feet from the table. Up close, he looked at the coins Emmett still held at the $20 bill on the table at the bikers, who'd gone quiet again in a different way. Making friends, Brennan asked Emmett, voice light. Then to the man, I'm Deputy Brennan. I know the Harper family. They're under my watch. The man didn't stand, didn't move, just said calm and flat. The kid asked for soup. We bought it. Brennan's smile thinned just a fraction. That's real generous. But Emmett here knows he's supposed to check with me before talking to strangers. Emmett's fingers tightened around the coins until the edges bit into his palm. The man's eyes never left Brennan's face. Strangers bought him food. You have a problem with that? No problem, Brennan said, and his tone stayed friendly, stayed professional, stayed exactly as dangerous as it had always been beneath the shine. Just making sure everyone understands the situation. Nora Harper's complicated. She makes choices that aren't always in her best interest. Or Emmett's. The woman with short hair spoke up, voice controlled. Kid says his mama's sick. She is, Brennan agreed. She's also stubborn. Won't accept help. Won't follow medical advice. It's a tough situation. Tough for who? The woman asked. Brennan's eyes flicked to her, reassessing. For everyone who cares about her. Jolene appeared from the kitchen, carrying 2 bowls of soup. Steam rose from them, rich and thick, the kind of soup that cost more than $3.50, but she'd made it anyway. She set one bowl on the table in front of the empty chair and carefully placed the other in a paper bag with a plastic lid folding the top tight. Here you go, sweetheart, she said to Emmett, and her voice shook. Emmett reached for the bin with both hands, terrified it might vanish. The warmth bled through the paper into his palms. Real. Solid. Thank you, he whispered. The man at the table pushed the 20 toward Jolene. She looked at it like it might burn her, then took it and walked away without asking for change. Brennan put a hand on Emmett's shoulder. Light. Casual. The way adults touch children when they're being friendly. But Emmett felt the weight of it, the pressure that said stay or go depending on what the deputy decided. Let's get you back to your mama, buddy, Brennan said. Then to the man, thanks for the soup. We'll take it from here. The man didn't argue. He just looked at Emmett and said quiet enough that maybe only Emmett heard, you take that straight to her. Don't talk to anyone else. Go right back. Emmett nodded fast. Brennan's hand tightened just slightly on Emmett's shoulder, then released. Good advice. Come on, Emmett. Emmett moved toward the door, clutching the soup bag like it was the only thing in the world that mattered. The bell chimed again as Brennan opened it, holding it for Emmett with the same smile that never reached his eyes. Before he stepped out, Emmett looked back. The man at the table was still watching him. So was the woman with short hair. So were all 77 bikers, and their faces said something Emmett couldn't read yet, but felt in his bones. Then the door closed and Emmett was outside in the heat and dust with Deputy Brennan beside him, and the soup growing heavier in his hands. That wasn't smart, buddy, Brennan said as they walked toward the patrol car. His voice stayed friendly. It always did. Your mama wouldn't want you talking to bikers. I just wanted soup, Emmett said, small. I know, but there are rules. You know that. Brennan opened the passenger door of his cruiser. Get in. I'll drive you back. Emmett climbed in the soup bag on his lap seat belt, clicking across his chest. Through the windshield, he could see Grady's corner diner, the motorcycles still lined up like sentries, the windows reflecting sky so he couldn't see inside anymore. Brennan got in the driver's seat and didn't start the engine. He sat there, hands on the wheel, looking straight ahead. Emmett, he said, and the friendly voice had an edge now, the one that came out when Mama said something he didn't like. Those people aren't your friends. They don't know you. They don't care about you. They saw a kid and felt sorry, and tomorrow they'll be gone and you'll still be here, and your mama will still need someone to take care of her. Emmett stared at the soup bag. I take care of you, Brennan continued. I make sure you have a place to stay. I check on your mama. I help when nobody else will. You understand that, right? Yes, sir, Emmett whispered. Good. Brennan started the engine. Because if those bikers come around again, if they try to talk to you or your mama, you tell me. Immediately. Can you do that? Yes, sir. Good boy. The drive to Sunrise Motel took 4 minutes. Brennan parked near the room 12, but he didn't get out. He just sat there watching Emmett unbuckle, watching him grip the door handle. Emmett, Brennan said. I'll check on your mama later tonight. Make sure she eats that soup, all of it. And remember what I said. Yes, sir. Emmett pushed the door open and ran. He didn't mean to run. Running looked like guilt. But the soup was getting cold and Mama was alone, and the patrol car felt like a cage even with the door open. He hit the motel room door with his shoulder fumbling with the key card Mama kept in his pocket. Red light, green. The lock clicked and he shoved inside. Room 12 smelled like sickness and cheap soap and the kind of fear that lived in walls. One bedsheets tangled a shape under them that barely moved. A table with empty medicine bottles. A chair propped up with a phone book. The heater aimed at nothing rattling. Mama, Emmett called soft. The shape stirred, turned. Nora Harper's face appeared from the blankets, pale and slick with sweat, eyes glassy with fever that wouldn't break. Baby, she breathed. You're back. I got soup. Emmett crossed to her, set the bag on the edge of the bed. It's still hot. Nora tried to sit up, couldn't. Her arms shook. Emmett grabbed pillows, shoved them behind her, doing what he'd learned to do when she got too weak to do it herself. Where'd you get soup? She asked, and her voice rattled in her chest like broken glass. Grady's diner. A man bought it. He was nice. Nora's eyes sharpened despite the fever. What man? A biker. There were lots of them. But he was nice. He didn't hurt me. Emmett, Nora started coughing. Deep wet, the kind that made Emmett's stomach twist because he'd heard that cough get worse every day and didn't know when worse became can't breathe anymore. She coughed into her hand, pulled it away. Blood flecked her palm. Emmett's heart stopped. Mama, I'm fine. She gasped, but she wasn't. She tried to smile. Failed. Did Mike see you? Emmett nodded. Nora's face crumpled. Oh, baby. What did he say? He said not to talk to strangers. He said he'll check on you tonight. Nora closed her eyes like the words hurt worse than the cough. Okay, we have to be careful. Mike gets upset when people interfere. Emmett opened the soup container. Steam rose. Chicken noodle thick with vegetables, the kind that might actually help. He handed her the spoon. Nora took it with shaking hands, lifted a spoonful to her mouth, swallowed. Her eyes filled with tears. It's good, she whispered. The man gave us two, Emmett said. This one's yours. I have one too. Nora looked at the bag at the second container inside, and something in her face broke. What man? What was his name? I don't know, he didn't say. But Mama, Emmett hesitated. He looked at my wrist, where the hospital band was, and he asked our last name. Nora went very still. What did you tell him? Harper, like you said to. Did he say anything when you said Harper? Emmett thought back. He got real quiet, like it meant something. Nora stared at the soup like it had turned into a snake. What did he look like? Big, silver hair. He had eyes like he was sad but trying not to show it. Nora's hands started shaking so bad the spoon clattered against the bowl. Oh, God. Mama, what's wrong? Nothing, baby. She set the bowl down. Looked at Emmett with eyes that were suddenly too awake, too sharp despite the fever. Did he say anything else? Anything at all? He said to take the soup straight to you and not talk to anyone. Nora pressed her hand over her mouth. Her shoulders shook. Emmett couldn't tell if she was crying or coughing until she pulled her hand away and he saw tears. Mama, I'm sorry. Did I do something wrong? No. Nora grabbed his hand, held it too tight. No, baby. You did good. You did so good. But listen to me. If that man comes back, if you see him again, She stopped, coughed. Blood this time more than before speckling the sheets. Mama, I'm fine. But she wasn't. She tried to breathe and it sounded like drowning. Emmett knew that sound. He'd heard it get worse for 3 days. He knew what came next because the hospital doctor had told him before they sent Mama home, before they said come back when you can pay, before the fever started climbing and didn't stop. I'm calling 911, Emmett said. No, we can't afford. Mama, you can't breathe. Mike will be upset. He said no more hospitals. He said. Nora doubled over coughing so hard her whole body convulsed. The soup bowl tips spilled across the sheets and she didn't even notice. Emmett ran for the motel phone. His hands shook so bad he could barely press the numbers. 911. It rang once. The door burst open. Deputy Brennan filled the doorway, hand on his belt near his gun eyes, taking in the scene in one sweep. Emmett with the phone. Nora bent double on the bed, blood on her hand. Soup spilled everywhere. "What are you doing?" Brennan asked, and his voice had that edge again, the one that meant someone was about to be in trouble. "She can't breathe," Emmett said, phone pressed to his ear. "She needs help." The 911 operator answered. "This is 911. What's your emergency?" "Hang up the phone, Emmett," Brennan said. "My mama can't breathe." Emmett said into the phone. "Room 12, Sunrise Motel. She's coughing. Blood. She—" Brennan crossed the room in 3 strides and took the phone from Emmett's hand. Not rough, firm, the way adults do when they're taking control. "This is Deputy Brennan, badge 447, he said into the phone, voice calm and professional. "False alarm. Patient has a history of anxiety and substance use. She's refusing treatment. We're handling it. Thank you." He hung up. Emmett stared at him. "She's not refusing. She's dying. Emmett, go outside." "No." Brennan's face didn't change. "Go. On outside, now." Nora tried to speak, managed only a wheeze that sounded like please. Brennan knelt beside the bed, pulled out his own phone, and took a photo of Nora, fever slick, tangled in bloody sheets. Soup spilled everywhere. Evidence of something, Emmett didn't know what. "See this?" Brennan said, showing Nora the photo. "This is what happens when you let strangers interfere. This is what happens when Emmett disobeys me. You want him to see this? You want him to watch you fall apart." Nora shook her head, tears streaming. "Then you rest. You take the medicine I brought you last week. And tomorrow you'll feel better. And we don't call 911 anymore. Understand?" Nora nodded. She had no choice. Emmett could see it in her eyes the way he'd seen it 100 times before. "No choice." Brennan stood, looked at Emmett. "Outside, I need to talk to your mom alone." "No," Emmett said again, but smaller this time. "Emmett," Brennan's voice didn't rise, didn't have to. "Your mama needs to rest. You being here makes it harder. Go sit by the ice machine, 5 minutes. Then you can come back." Emmett looked at Mama. Mama nodded just barely. Emmett walked outside. The door closed behind him. Through the thin walls he heard voices. Brennan's steady, controlled. Mama's weak pleading. Words he couldn't make out but felt in his chest anyway. He sat by the ice machine like he was told. It hummed and rattled. The sun was setting and painting the motel parking lot gold and red like it was on fire. Across the lot an engine rumbled. Emmett looked up. 2 motorcycles rolled in slow. No roar, no show, just quiet presence. The man from the diner stopped his bike near the office, far enough away that it didn't look threatening, close enough that Emmett could see his face. The woman with short hair parked beside him. They didn't get off their bikes, didn't approach. They just sat there, engines idling, watching room 12's closed door the way guards watch a perimeter they're not supposed to cross but won't abandon either. The man's eyes found Emmett across the lot. He didn't wave, didn't smile, just looked at him with that same expression from the diner, the one that said, "I see you." The door to room 12 opened. Deputy Brennan stepped out, saw the motorcycles, and his jaw tightened. He walked toward them, hand resting on his belt, near his badge, posture, casual but deliberate. Emmett couldn't hear what was said, but he saw Brennan point at the bikes, saw him gesture toward the street, saw the man not move, not react, just sit there like stone. The woman pulled out her phone, started filming. Brennan's face changed. The friendly mask slipped for just a second, showing something cold underneath. Then it snapped back into place, and he turned, walked back to his patrol car without looking at room 12 again. The cruiser pulled out of the lot and disappeared down the road. The motorcycles stayed. 5 minutes became 10, then 15. Then the man got off his bike, slow and obvious, and walked to the motel office. Talked to someone inside, came back out, didn't approach room 12, just returned to his bike and waited. When Emmett finally got up and walked back to the door, the man nodded once. Just once. Like a promise Emmett didn't understand yet, but needed anyway. Emmett opened the door to room 12. Mama was still on the bed, but sitting up now, pillows behind her, the spilled soup cleaned up. Her face was still too pale, still slick with fever, but her eyes were sharp and scared in a new way. "Baby," she whispered, "those men outside, did they say anything to you?" Emmett shook his head. If they come to the door, you don't open it. You hear me no matter what they say. Why? Because Mike says they're dangerous. Emmett thought about the man buying soup, about the woman filming Brennan when he got angry, about the way they hadn't moved when Brennan told them to leave. Mama, he said slowly, are they really dangerous? Or does Mike just say that? Nora stared at him. For a long time she didn't answer. Then she reached out and pulled him close, held him like he might disappear. I don't know anymore, she whispered. I don't know what's real. Outside, the motorcycle's engines hummed, not leaving, not threatening, just there. And Emmett sat on the edge of the bed with Mama's arms around him and his own soup finally going cold, and wondered for the first time in his life if maybe the things adults called dangerous weren't always the things that hurt you. Maybe sometimes danger wore a badge and smiled while it squeezed. Maybe sometimes safety came from strangers who bought soup and stayed when they should have left. Maybe the world was bigger and more complicated than Mama or Deputy Brennan had ever told him. And maybe, just maybe, that man's sad eyes had recognized something in Emmett's last name that mattered. Harper. The name felt heavier now, like it meant something Emmett didn't remember, but someone else did. Outside, the sun finished setting. The motorcycle stayed. And in room 12 of the Sunrise Motel, a 6-year-old boy held his sick mother and counted the minutes until the next bad thing happened, because that's what life had taught him to expect. What he didn't expect was the good things that were coming. What he didn't know was that the sad-eyed man with silver hair had made a promise 6 years ago and broken it every day since. What he didn't understand yet was that sometimes promises get kept late, but they still count. And what none of them knew, not Emmett, not Nora, not the man watching from his motorcycle, was how much blood and paperwork and stubbornness it would take to turn $1.37 into something that mattered. But they were about to learn. They were about to learn everything. The ambulance lights painted room 12 in strobing blue and red, turning everything into a nightmare Emmett was living while awake. It happened fast after the motorcycle stayed. Mama's breathing got worse, the rattling deeper, and when she tried to stand to use the bathroom, she collapsed halfway there. Emmett screamed. The motel manager called 911 before Deputy Brennan could stop him. And this time when the operator asked questions, there were witnesses who wouldn't be silenced by a badge. Now Mama was on a stretcher, oxygen mask over her face. EMTs moving with controlled urgency that meant serious without saying the word out loud, where a 6-year-old could hear it. Severe pneumonia, possible sepsis, one EMT said into her radio. Female late 20s, altered mental status, fever of 104, oxygen, sat at 87. We're transporting code 2. Emmett knew what code 2 meant. He'd learned it the last time Mama got this bad. It meant lights but no sirens. It meant hurry, but don't scare the kid more than he already is. I'm going with her, Emmett said, grabbing the stretcher rail. The female EMT knelt. What's your name, sweetheart? Emmett, Harper. Okay, Emmett. Yes, you can ride with us. You stay right beside me. Okay. Emmett nodded fast. He still had the soup bag clutched in his other hand, crumpled now, and cold, but he couldn't let it go, because it was the only thing that had gone right today. Deputy Brennan appeared at the ambulance doors. I'll follow in my unit. Emmett can ride with me. The EMT's face hardened in a way Emmett had never seen an adult's face harden at a police officer before. He's riding with his mother, that's protocol. I'm law enforcement. I can... Sir, step back. The EMT's voice didn't rise, but it cut like steel. We're transporting a critical patient. If you want to follow, that's your choice. But this child stays with his mother. Brennan's jaw flexed. His eyes found Emmett through the ambulance doors, and that look said, we'll talk later, in a way that made Emmett's stomach hurt. Then the door slammed shut, and the ambulance was moving, and Emmett was inside with the bright lights and the beeping machines and Mama's hand limp in his. Mama, he whispered. Can you hear me? No response. Just the oxygen mask fogging with each shallow breath. The EMT squeezed his shoulder. She can probably hear you. Keep talking to her. So Emmett did. He told her about the soup, about the man with sad Yisrael, about the motorcycles that stayed. He told her everything except the part about being scared, because if he said that out loud, it would become too real and he'd fall apart, and Mama needed him to be brave. County Hospital rose from the night like a fortress of fluorescent lights and sterile fear. The ambulance bay doors opened, and they rolled Mama inside so fast Emmett had to jog to keep up. 6-year-old male patient's son, the EMT, told the triage nurse. He stays with her until family services says otherwise. The nurse name tag reading Williams looked at Emmett with tired kindness. Okay, honey, you can stay close. But when the doctors need to work, you'll have to wait in a special room, okay? Emmett nodded because what choice did he have? They wheeled Mama through double doors into a space filled with curtains and beeping and people in scrubs moving too fast. A doctor appeared young and exhausted and started asking questions Emmett couldn't answer. How long has she been sick? I don't know, days. Is she taking any medications? Deputy Brennan gave her some, I don't know what. The doctor's head snapped up at that. A deputy gave her medication, what kind, pills, in a bottle with no label. The doctor's eyes met the nurse's, and something passed between them that made Emmett's chest tighten. Get a tox screen, the doctor said. Then to Emmett, gentle, you did good, buddy, you got her here. That's the hard part. It didn't feel like the hard part. The hard part was watching them cut Mama's shirt open to place electrodes. Watching them stick needles in her arms for IVs. Watching the oxygen mask get replaced by something bigger that made her look like she was drowning. Emmett Harper, a woman appeared beside him, 40's kind face badge clipped to her cardigan that read social services. I'm Ms. Banks, Cordelia Banks. I'm here to make sure you're okay while your mama gets help. Emmett didn't trust easily anymore, but something about Mrs. Banks felt different from the fake kindness adults usually showed. She waited for him to speak first, instead of filling the silence with lies about everything being fine. Is Mama going to die? Emmett asked. Mrs. Banks took a breath. The doctors are doing everything they can. She's very sick. But you got her here, and that gives her a chance she wouldn't have had. Deputy Brennan said I shouldn't have called. Ms. Banks's face went very still. What? He said she was refusing treatment. He hung up when I called 911 the first time. Ms. Banks pulled out a small notebook, the kind detectives used on TV. When was this? Earlier, at the motel before the ambulance came. Emmett, I need you to tell me exactly what happened. Can you do that? So Emmett told her, all of it. The diner, the soup, Deputy Brennan taking the phone, the way he made Mama too scared to ask for help, the pills with no labels, the way Brennan took photos of Mama when she was sick and said it was her fault. Ms. Banks wrote everything down. Her hand shook slightly. You did the right thing telling me, she said when he finished. Everything you just said, it's important. And you're safe now. Okay, nobody's taking you anywhere without proper paperwork. Brennan has paperwork, Emmett said. He showed it to Mama once. It said he could take me if Mama couldn't take care of me. Ms. Banks's jaw tightened. What kind of paperwork? I don't know, official looking, with a seal. Did you see a judge's signature? Emmett shook his head. I didn't look at it close. Mama just got real quiet after. Banks could respond, the double doors burst open, and Deputy Brennan walked in like he owned the hospital. Behind him, an older man in a sheriff's uniform, silver star on his chest face like granite. There he is, Brennan said, pointing at Emmett. Emmett, buddy, come here. Ms. Banks stood, positioning herself between them. Deputy, the child is under hospital supervision. I'm his legal guardian, Brennan said, pulling a folder from under his arm. Emergency protective custody order. Signed yesterday. Ms. Banks took the folder, opened it. Emmett watched her face change from confused to angry as she read. This isn't signed by a judge, she said. It's signed by a magistrate. That's legally sufficient. For emergency custody, no, it's not. This requires a juvenile court judge's signature. The sheriff stepped forward. Ma'am, my deputy has authority here. You are welcome to verify through proper channels. But right now, that boy needs to be placed in protective custody while his mother receives treatment. Protective custody from what? Ms. Banks asked. From the motorcycle gang that's been harassing them, Brennan said smoothly. There are 77 bikers at that motel. The child is traumatized. His mother can't protect him. I'm taking him to a safe location. Emmett's voice came out small. They didn't hurt me. They bought soup. Emmett, you don't understand. I understand you won't let Mama get help. The words exploded out before Emmett could stop them. I understand you took the phone. I understand Mama cries when you come, and you say it's helping, but it's not. The corridor went very quiet. Brennan's smile didn't waver, but his eyes went cold. Emmett's confused. His mother has substance abuse issues. He doesn't know what's real. My mama doesn't do drugs, Emmett shouted. Emmett, Ms. Banks started. She doesn't. He gives her pills. He makes her take them. Brennan crouched, bringing himself to Emmett's level with that same false kindness. Buddy, I know you're scared, but your mama asked me to help. She asked me to make sure you were safe. And right now, the safest place for you is with me. No, Emmett backed up until he hit a wall. No, I want to stay with mama. Your mama can't hear you right now. She's sedated. Then I'll wait. I'll wait until she wakes up. Emmett? Brennan's hand reached out, and Emmett did something he'd never done before. He screamed, loud, the kind of scream that brings every nurse on the floor running. Don't touch me, don't touch me. You hurt mama, you hurt her, and you say you're helping, but you're not. Medical staff appeared, security, a doctor Emmett hadn't seen before. Everyone talking at once. Ms. Banks raised her voice above the chaos. Deputy, step back, now. Ma'am, I have legal authority. You have a piece of paper that isn't properly signed and a child who is terrified of you. You will step back or I'm calling hospital security to remove you. The sheriff's hand went to Brennan's shoulder. Son, maybe we should wait for proper verification. Let the hospital handle it. Brennan stared at Ms. Banks like he wanted to say something that would destroy her career. Then his smile returned wider than before. Of course, I understand. I'll wait right here while you verify. Emmett, buddy, I'll be close by if you need me. Emmett slid down the wall until he was sitting arms wrapped around his knees, the crumpled soup bag still somehow in his hand. He'd never felt smaller in his life. Ms. Banks knelt beside him. Emmett, I'm taking you to a safe room. You'll be able to see your mama through a window, but you'll be away from the main hallway. Okay. Is he going to take me? Not if I can help it. Adults always say that. Then they do anyway. Ms. Banks looked at him with something that might have been respect for a cynic too young to vote, but old enough to see through nonsense. You're right. Adults lie, but I'm going to try very hard to be different. Deal. Emmett nodded because what else could he do? They moved through corridors that smelled like antiseptic and fear until they reached a small room with a window that looked into the ICU. Through the glass, Emmett could see Mama surrounded by machines, a tube down her throat, now chest rising and falling with mechanical precision. They had to intubate her, Ms. Banks explained. That means a machine is breathing for her while her lungs heal. It looks scary, but it's keeping her alive. Emmett pressed his hand against the glass. Mama, I'm here, he whispered, even though he knew she couldn't hear. Behind him, Ms. Banks was on the phone, voice low and urgent. Yes, I need to speak with a juvenile court judge immediately. No, this can't wait until morning. We have a deputy claiming emergency custody with insufficient documentation, and the child is exhibiting signs of abuse. Yes, I'll hold. The minutes crawled by like hours. Emmett watched Mama breathe through machines and counted each rise and fall of her chest like they were prayers. Then Ms. Banks's phone rang. She answered, listened, and her face transformed from worried to determined. Understood. Yes, I have witnesses. I'll document everything. Thank you, Your Honor. She hung up and immediately started writing in her notebook with fierce concentration. What happened? Emmett asked. A judge is coming, a real one. She's reviewing the custody order personally, and she's not happy about what she's hearing. Will she stop Brennan? If the paperwork is fake, yes. And if it's real, Ms. Banks hesitated. Then honest, then we fight harder. The door opened. Dakota Pierce walked in, the woman from the motorcycle still wearing leather, but her vest was off now, tucked under her arm. She moved like someone who knew hospitals had rules and was prepared to follow exactly enough of them to avoid being thrown out. Emmett Harper, she asked. Emmett nodded. My name's Dakota. I'm with Mason Reeves, the man who bought you soup. We've been outside since the ambulance left. Mason wanted me to check on you. He's still here. He's not leaving until he knows you're okay. Something in Emmett's chest loosened slightly. Why? Dakota crouched, meeting his eyes. Because he made a promise a long time ago to someone important, and he just figured out you might be part of that promise. I don't understand. You will. But right now, I need to know, are you safe? Is anyone trying to take you somewhere you don't want to go? Deputy Brennan says he has papers. Dakota's eyes hardened. Where is he now? waiting outside. He's not allowed in here. Good. Dakota pulled out her phone. I'm texting Mason. He needs to know. Ms. Banks watched this exchange with professional concern. Ma'am, I appreciate your concern, but I'm not here to cause problems, Dakota said. I'm here because that deputy has a history. 3 other women in this county have restraining orders against him. He uses his badge to control vulnerable people. And if he's trying to take this kid, it's not for the kid's safety. Ms. Banks stared at her. How do you know this? Because we looked. Mason started making calls the second we saw how that kid reacted to Brennan. We've got names, dates, case numbers, and we've got a lawyer on the way who specializes in protective custody disputes. You researched all this in 3 hours. We're motivated. Emmett looked between them, not understanding half the words, but understanding the tone. These people were fighting for him, and that was new. Why? He asked again. Why do you care? Dakota's face softened. Because we know what it's like when the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones you need protection from. A commotion erupted in the hallway. Raised voices, someone saying you can't go in there. Then Brennan pushed through the door, face flushed, that friendly mask completely gone now. The sheriff was behind him, looking uncomfortable. Emmett, we're leaving. Now. No, Emmett pressed himself into the corner. Deputy, Miss Banks started. The hospital administrator agreed. The child is being released to my custody pending proper placement. The hell he is, Dakota said, stepping between them. Brennan's eyes locked on hers. Ma'am, you need to leave. You have no legal standing here. And you have fake paperwork. It's not fake. It's been verified. By who? The sheriff, who's your buddy. The sheriff's face reddened. Ma'am, watch your tone. Or what you'll arrest me for asking questions. Dakota pulled out her phone. Because I'm recording this. And I've got 17 bikers outside with cameras. And a judge on speed dial who's very interested in why a deputy is trying to remove a child from a hospital while his mother is unconscious. Brennan took a step toward her. Not aggressive, just present, in a way that made the room feel smaller. You're interfering with a law enforcement action. Prove it's lawful. The paperwork isn't signed by a juvenile court judge. We checked. Brennan's jaw flexed. For a second, Emmett saw something behind the mask, something angry and ugly that lived there all the time, but usually stayed hidden. Then he smiled. Fine, we'll wait for the judge. But when she arrives and confirms my authority, you'll apologize. And then you'll leave, all of you. Looking forward to it, Dakota said. They stood in tense silence. Emmett huddled in the corner. Soon. Banks documented everything in her notebook. The sheriff looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. And through the window, Mama breathed through machines, unaware that her son's entire future was being decided by people who'd never met her. The door opened again. This time Mason Reeves walked in. He was bigger than Emmett remembered from the diner, or maybe the room was smaller. But his eyes were the same, sound and determined, and looking at Emmett like he saw something that mattered. Emmett, he said, voice low. You okay? Emmett nodded because his voice wouldn't work. Mason turned to Brandon. Deputy? Mr. Reeves, you need to leave. I'm not leaving. Then you'll be arrested for obstruction. Arrest me. Mason's voice didn't rise. But do it on camera in a hospital in front of witnesses while trying to remove a child from his dying mother. See how that plays. The sheriff stepped forward. Now hold on. No. Mason's eyes stayed on Brennan. You held off long enough. That boy asked for soup and you treated it like a crime. His mother needed an ambulance and you tried to stop it. You're not taking him. Not tonight. Not ever. You have no legal authority. Neither do you. Not with that paperwork. How would you know? Because we had it examined by a lawyer an hour ago. You filed emergency custody with a magistrate who doesn't have jurisdiction over family court matters. It's invalid. Brennan's face went very still. You had no right. It's a public document. We had every right. The silence stretched like wire about to snap. Then Emmett heard it. Footsteps in the corridor. Multiple pairs. Moving with purpose. The door opened. A woman in her 60s walked in, gray hair, pulled back, dark coat over professional clothes, eyes that missed nothing. Behind her, 2 state troopers in uniform and a man in a plain suit carrying a briefcase. I'm Judge Catherine Aldridge, Circuit Court, she said. Her voice was calm, but carried the kind of authority that made everyone in the room straighten instinctively. Someone want to tell me why I'm at a hospital at midnight dealing with an emergency custody dispute that should never have reached my desk. Emmett had seen judges on TV. They wore black robes and sat high behind wooden desks and said, "Order in the court," like they were angry at everyone. Judge Aldridge didn't look like that. She looked like someone's grandmother, if that grandmother had spent 50 years learning how to dismantle people with paperwork. She scanned the room, gaze landing on each person for exactly 1 second. Brennan the sheriff, Ms. Banks, Dakota Mason. Then Emmett, and her eyes softened just slightly before moving on. "Deputy Brennan," she said, "show me your custody order." Brennan handed over the folder, confidence returning. "Your Honor, this is a difficult situation. The child's mother is incapacitated. There's a motorcycle gang harassing the family. Emergency protective custody was necessary." Judge Aldridge read the document. Her expression didn't change. She finished, closed the folder, and looked at Brennan with eyes like ice. "This is signed by Magistrate Collins." "Yes, Your Honor." Magistrate Collins handles traffic violations and small claims disputes. He has zero jurisdiction over family court matters. Your Honor, in an emergency. An emergency requires a juvenile court judge, which I am, which means this order is invalid, and you knew it was invalid when you filed it. The room temperature dropped 10 degrees. Brennan's face went carefully neutral. Your Honor, I acted in good faith. You acted in bad paperwork. There's a difference. She turned to Ms. Banks. Your social services. Yes, Your Honor. Cordelia Banks. What's your assessment? The child is terrified of the deputy. He described a pattern of control and intimidation toward both him and his mother. The mother was brought in with severe pneumonia after the deputy allegedly prevented an earlier 911 call. I have significant concerns about the deputy's involvement with this family. Judge Aldridge looked at Emmett. Son, what's your name? Emmett Harper, ma'am. Emmett, I'm not going to ask you a lot of questions right now because you've had a hard night, but I need to know one thing. Do you feel safe with Deputy Brennan? Emmett looked at Brennan, at the smile that promised consequences later, at the eyes that said, choose carefully. Then he looked at Mama through the glass, unconscious and breathing through a machine because she'd been too scared to ask for help until it was almost too late. No, ma'am, Emmett said. I don't feel safe with him. Why not? Because he hurts Mama and says it's helping, and he makes me lie about it. Judge Aldridge's jaw tightened. She turned to Brennan. Deputy, you're ordered to have no contact with this child or his mother. If you violate that order, you will be held in contempt. Clear. Your Honor, I'm law enforcement, which makes it worse, not better. No contact. The state troopers will ensure compliance. One of the troopers, a tall man with gray at his temples, stepped forward. Deputy Brennan, you need to leave the hospital. Brennan stared at Judge Aldridge like she'd just declared war on everything he believed about his own authority. Then he looked at Mason with pure hatred. This isn't over, he said quietly. Yes, Judge Aldridge replied. It is. Leave now. Brennan left. The sheriff followed, muttering something about consulting with the county attorney. The door closed behind them, and Emmett felt like he could breathe for the first time in hours. Judge Aldridge knelt beside him, bringing herself to his level. Emmett, you're going to stay here at the hospital tonight. Ms. Banks will be with you. In the morning, we'll figure out what comes next. But nobody is taking you anywhere without proper authorization from me. Understand? Yes, ma'am. Good boy. She stood, looked at Mason. Mr. Reeves, I need to speak with you, privately. Mason glanced at Emmett, then nodded. They stepped into the hallway, Judge Aldridge closing the door behind them. Through the window in the door, Emmett could see them talking. Mason's face changed as he listened, going from tense to shocked to something that looked like grief. His hand came up to his mouth. His eyes closed. Judge Aldridge put a hand on his shoulder, speaking urgently. Mason shook his head, lips forming words Emmett couldn't hear. Then he looked through the window at Emmett, and his expression was completely different than before. He looked at Emmett the way people looked at ghosts they thought they'd lost forever. Dakota noticed it too. What's happening? She murmured. Ms. Banks was watching with professional concern. I don't know, but something just changed. The door opened. Mason walked back in, moving carefully like he was carrying something fragile. He crossed to Emmett and crouched, meeting his eyes. Emmett, he said, voice rough. What's your mama's real name? Emmett blinked. Nora Harper. Is that the name she was born with? I, I don't know. She said we changed names before I remember. Do you know why? She said we had to hide from bad people. Mason took a shaky breath. Emmett, I need you to think hard. Has your mama ever mentioned a man named Caleb? Emmett's chest tightened. That name. He'd heard it once, maybe twice, when mama had fever dreams and whispered things she didn't remember later. Maybe when she's sick sometimes. She says, I'm sorry, Caleb, and cries. Mason's eyes filled. Oh, God. Mr. Reeves, Ms. Banks said carefully, what's going on? Mason looked at Judge Aldrich through the doorway. She nodded once, giving permission. Emmett's mother, Mason said slowly. Her real name isn't Nora Harper. It's Rachel Harper. And 6 years ago, she was married to my brother. Not by blood, but by choice. His name was Caleb Harper. Emmett stared at him. I don't understand. Caleb died 6 years ago, protecting people. Before he died, he made me promise to take care of his wife and son. He made me promise to keep them safe. Mason's voice cracked. I looked for you. For 2 years I looked. But your mama disappeared, changed her name. I thought maybe she didn't want to be found, but she was just scared. She was hiding from the same people Caleb died fighting. You knew my daddy. He was my best friend. Emmett's world tilted. All his life, Mama had said Daddy died before Emmett could remember. Said he was gone and they had to be careful and never tell anyone their real names. But she never said why. Never said who he was. Was he good? Emmett whispered. He was the best man I ever knew. Mason's voice shook. And he loved you so much. He talked about you every day. Called you his little man. Made me promise that if anything happened to him, I'd find you and keep you safe. But you didn't find us. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Emmett. But I found you now, and I'm not leaving again. That's a promise. Emmett's eyes filled with tears he'd been holding back since the ambulance. Mama said promises don't mean anything. That people say them and then disappear. Some people do, but I don't. Your daddy didn't either, and neither do you, or you wouldn't have fought so hard to get your mama help. The tears spilled over. Emmett tried to stop them, tried to be brave like he'd learned to be, but they came anyway in heaving sobs that shook his whole body. Mason pulled him close, and Emmett let him because for the first time since he could remember, someone was holding him who wasn't going to hurt him or leave or turn into something scary when the lights went out. Through the observation window, Mama breathed through machines. And somewhere outside, Deputy Brennan was planning his next move. And the world was still dangerous, complicated, and full of things a 6-year-old shouldn't have to understand. But right now, in this moment, Emmett had something he'd never had before. Someone who'd made a promise to his father and meant to keep it. Even if it took 6 years. Even if it cost everything. That had to mean something. That had to be enough to hold on to. Your daddy would be so proud of you, Mason whispered. You saved your mama's life today. You asked for help when nobody else would. That took more courage than most adults have. Deputy Brennan said asking for help was wrong. Deputy Brennan is going to learn what happens when you hurt people who matter to me. Emmett pulled back, looking up at Mason's face. What happens? Mason's expression went hard as stone. Justice, eventually, even when it takes too long. Through the door window, Judge Aldridge watched them with an expression that said she agreed, and outside in the parking lot, 77 motorcycles sat in formation, waiting for the word that would never come, because this wasn't the kind of problem that got solved with violence. This was the kind that got solved with patience and paperwork, and people who refused to look away. The kind that took time. The kind that mattered most. Dawn came to County Hospital the way it came to everywhere else, indifferent to whether the people inside had slept or cried or spent the night watching machines breathe for someone they loved. Emmett woke on a couch in the family waiting room blanket, tucked around him by someone who carried Dakota asleep in the chair beside him like a guard who wouldn't abandon her post. Through the window, he could see Mama's room where nurses moved in quiet choreography around the machines, keeping her alive. The tube was still down her throat. The ventilator still hissed and clicked, but the numbers on the monitors looked different, less frantic, more steady. A nurse noticed him watching and offered a small smile. Progress. The kind you measured in decimal points, in oxygen saturation percentages, but progress nonetheless. Mason appeared in the doorway holding 2 cups of coffee and a carton of orange juice. He looked like he hadn't slept either, silver-haired, disheveled clothes rumpled, but his eyes were clear and fixed on Emmett with that same intensity from the diner. "Hey," he said softly, "you hungry?" Emmett nodded. "Hospital cafeteria is not much, but it's food. You want to come with me, or you want me to bring something back?" "I don't want to leave Mama." "Okay, what do you like?" "Anything's fine." Mason crouched, bringing himself to eye level. "Emmett, I asked what you like, not what's easiest, not what you think you should say. What do you actually want to eat?" Emmett stared at him, trying to remember the last time an adult had asked him a question like that and waited for a real answer. "Pancakes," he whispered finally. "With syrup." "Pancakes it is." Mason stood, then paused. "Judge Aldridge is coming back this morning. She wants to talk to you and your mama when your mama wakes up. You okay with that?" "Is she going to take me away?" "No. She's going to make sure nobody takes you away. There's a difference." Emmett wanted to believe that. He'd spent 6 years learning not to trust promises, but something about the way Mason said it, flat and certain, like stating a fact instead of making a wish, made it feel possible. After Mason left, Dakota stirred awake. She stretched, joints popping, and caught Emmett watching her. "Morning," she said. "How long you been up?" "A little while." "Your mama's numbers look better." "What do the numbers mean?" "They mean she's fighting and winning." Dakota stood, moved to the window. Outside, the parking lot was filling with early shift workers, but in the far corner, a cluster of motorcycles still sat in formation. The guys rotated through the night, made sure nobody who wasn't supposed to be here got close. Why? Because Mason asked. And when Mason asks, we show up. That's what family does. You're not my family. Not by blood, but family's more than blood, kid. It's who shows up when things are bad and doesn't leave when they get worse. Emmett thought about Deputy Brennan, who said he was family and felt like a prison. Then about these strangers on motorcycles who'd stayed all night in a parking lot just to make sure a 6-year-old could sleep without nightmares. Maybe Dakota was right. Maybe family was something you chose, not something you were born into. The door opened and a doctor came in, different from last night, older, with kind eyes behind wire-frame glasses. "You must be Emmett," she said. "I'm Dr. Reeves. No relation to Mason, though I've heard about him." She smiled. "I'm taking over your mama's care this morning." "Want to hear the update?" "Yes, ma'am." "Your mama has bacterial pneumonia. Very serious but treatable. We caught it just in time, another 12 hours and—" She didn't finish that sentence, didn't need to. "We've got her on strong antibiotics, and the ventilator is helping her lungs rest so they can heal. If things keep improving, we might be able to take the breathing tube out in a day or two. And then she'll be okay. Then she'll be better. Not okay yet, she'll need time to recover and she'll need a safe place to do that. But yes, she's going to live." The weight that had been sitting on Emmett's chest since the ambulance ride cracked slightly enough to let air in. "Can I see her?" "For a few minutes, and Emmett, you can talk to her. People on ventilators can often hear even if they can't respond. So tell her whatever you need to tell her." Dr. Reeves led him to Mama's room. Up close, the machines were louder, beeping, hissing, humming with electronic life. But beneath all that noise, Mama looked peaceful in a way she hadn't in months. No fever flush, no shaking, just sleep that might actually be restful. Emmett pulled a chair close to the bed and took her hand. It felt warmer than yesterday, less like touching something that might crumble. "Mama," he whispered, "I'm here. You're in the hospital and you're getting better. The doctor said you're going to be okay." The machines kept their rhythm, no change. But Emmett kept talking anyway. "I met someone. His name is Mason. He knew Daddy. He said Daddy made him promise to keep us safe, and he's been looking for us. I know you said we had to hide, and I know you were scared, but Mama, I think maybe we don't have to hide anymore. I think maybe we found the good people Daddy told you about." Still nothing, but Emmett squeezed her hand and imagined he felt a response, a tiny pressure that might have been real or might have been hope, but either way, it kept him talking. "Deputy Brennan can't come here anymore. The judge said so. And Mason's friends are outside making sure, so when you wake up, you don't have to be scared. You don't have to pretend everything's fine when it's not. You can just rest." "Okay, Mama. You can rest now." The ventilator hissed, the monitors beeped, and somewhere deep in Mama's sedated brain, maybe she heard, maybe she understood, maybe that was enough for now. Judge Aldridge returned at 9 a.m. Sharp, accompanied by a man in an expensive suit carrying a briefcase that looked like it cost more than Mama's car. This is investigator Warren Klein, as she introduced. He's been looking into Deputy Brennan's history with the county. What he found is concerning. They gathered in a conference room, Mason, Dakota, Miss Banks, Emmett, Judge Aldridge, and Klein. The investigator opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder thick enough to be a novel. Deputy Hale Brennan, Klein began, has been with the county sheriff's department for 8 years. In that time, 3 women have filed restraining orders against him. All 3 cases were settled quietly. All 3 women left town shortly after. Settled how? Ms. Banks asked. The sheriff's office paid them, told them it was easier than a lawsuit, told them Brennan would get counseling, told them it wouldn't happen again. But it did, Judge Aldridge said. It did. And there are 2 more cases we're still investigating, women who didn't file reports but whose friends noticed patterns. Isolation. Control. Using his badge as leverage. Klein pulled out photos. We also pulled hospital records with warrants. Nora Harper, whose real name is Rachel Harper, has been to the ER 4 times in 2 years, each time for injuries consistent with physical abuse. Each time she claimed to be accident-prone. Mason's jaw flexed, and nobody questioned it. Brennan filed reports stating she had substance abuse issues, made her look unreliable. Classic abuser tactic. Emmett stared at the photos, Mama with a split lip, Mama with bruises on her arms, Mama looking at the camera with dead eyes. He'd seen those injuries, believed the lies about falling, about being clumsy, because what else could he do at 6 years old? There's more, Klein continued. The custody paperwork Brennan tried to use, we tracked it. He's filed variations of that document 4 times with different magistrates, always targeting single mothers in vulnerable situations, always claiming emergency protective custody. And nobody stopped him. Dakota's voice was sharp with anger. The sheriff protected him, buried complaints, paid settlements, kept it quiet. Klein closed the folder. But that stops now. As of this morning, the state police have taken over the investigation. Brennan's been placed on administrative leave pending formal charges. What charges? Mason asked. Assault, stalking, falsifying legal documents, abuse of authority, and we're still building the case. Klein looked at Emmett. Your testimony is going to matter, son, when you're ready. Emmett swallowed hard. What do I have to do? Tell the truth, exactly what happened. Everything you remember about Deputy Brennan and your mama. Will he go to jail? If we do our jobs right, yes. Judge Aldridge leaned forward. Emmett, I know this is frightening, but here's what I need you to understand. You're not alone anymore. You have advocates, Ms. Banks, Mason, legal representation, and you have me making sure everything is done properly. Nobody is going to railroad you or your mother. Understood. Emmett nodded, throat too tight to speak. Good. Now there's something else we need to discuss. Judge Aldridge pulled out a different file, this one thinner. Mason told me who he believes your mother really is. And if he's correct, there are things about your family you deserve to know. She opened the file. The first page had a photo, a young man with dark hair and a smile that looked like sunshine holding a baby wrapped in a blue blanket. That's your father, Judge Aldridge said gently. Caleb Harper. And that baby is you. Emmett stared at the photo. He'd never seen a picture of his father. Mama said they'd lost everything when they ran that photos were dangerous because people could recognize them. But here he was, real solid, holding baby Emmett like he was the most precious thing in the world. He looks happy, Emmett whispered. He was. By all accounts, Caleb was a good man. He rode with Mason's club, worked security, helped keep drugs out of their community. Judge Aldridge turned the page. 6 years ago, there was an incident, a confrontation with a cartel that was trying to move product through the territory. Caleb was shot protecting Mason and the others. He died before the ambulance arrived. Mason's voice was rough. He jumped in front of me, took bullets meant for me. Last thing he said was, take care of Rachel and Elijah. Promise me, brother. Elijah, Emmett said. Is that my real name? It was. Your mama changed it to Emmett when she went into hiding. Why did she hide? Because she was scared. The cartel made threats. She didn't know who to trust, so she took you and disappeared, changed your names, moved constantly, tried to stay invisible. Judge Aldridge's voice softened. She was trying to keep you safe the only way she knew how. But we weren't safe. We found Deputy Brennan. No, Judge Aldridge agreed. You found something worse than what you were running from. That's the terrible irony. Mason spoke up, voice thick with emotion. Emmett Elijah, I spent 2 years looking for you and your mama. Asked everyone, checked every town, followed every lead. I failed your father. I broke my promise. But you found us now. 6 years late. But you found us. Emmett said it again, firmer. You bought soup. You stayed. You called the judge. You didn't leave. He looked at Mason with eyes too old for his face. That's more than nobody else did. Mason's eyes filled. He nodded, unable to speak. Judge Aldridge gave them a moment, then continued. Here's where we are legally. Your mother is still unconscious but stable. When she wakes, she'll need to make decisions about your care. But until then, I'm appointing Ms. Banks as your temporary guardian. You'll stay near the hospital in protective custody until we can speak with your mother. And then we figure out how to keep you both safe. Long-term, properly. She closed the file. Emmett, I know this is overwhelming. You're 6 years old and you've been through more than most adults experience in a lifetime. But I promise you this, what happened to you and your mother, it matters. And we're going to make sure it never happens to anyone else. Will Deputy Brennan come back? No, and if he tries, he'll be arrested immediately. What if he comes back anyway? Judge Aldridge's expression hardened. Then he'll learn that badges don't make you untouchable. They make you accountable. 2 days later, they removed Mama's breathing tube. Emmett was allowed to be there, standing at the foot of the bed while doctors and nurses worked with quiet efficiency. The tube came out, and Mama coughed, harsh, painful, but real. Her eyes fluttered open. Emmett, she rasped, voice wrecked from the intubation. I'm here, Mama. Her eyes focused, found him, and filled with tears. Baby, what happened? You got really sick. The hospital fixed you. How did I? She looked around at the IV lines, the monitors, the hospital room that must have cost a fortune they didn't have. Oh God, we can't afford this. We have to leave. No. Dr. Reeves stepped into view. Mrs. Harper, you're not going anywhere. You had severe bacterial pneumonia and sepsis. You nearly died. You're staying until you're well enough to be discharged properly. But the bill, is being handled, Mason said from the doorway. Mama's head snapped toward his voice. Her face went white. No, you can't be. She tried to sit up, panicked. Emmett, come here. Come here right now. Mama, it's okay. It's not okay, Emmett, get away from him. Mason didn't move closer. He stayed in the doorway, hands visible, voice calm. Rachel. She froze at the name, her real name. It's me, Mason continued. Mason Reeves, Caleb's brother. You remember me? Mama stared at him like he was a ghost. How did you? Your son asked for soup with $1.37. I saw the name Harper on his hospital band. I put it together. Mason's voice cracked. I'm sorry, Rachel. I'm so sorry I didn't find you sooner. You were supposed to. It came out as an accusation, years of fear and loneliness packed into 4 words. Caleb said you'd find us. He said you'd keep us safe. And you didn't. We've been alone for 6 years. 6 years. I know, I looked everywhere. I swear to God I looked. Not hard enough. Mama was crying now, anger and grief pouring out. Not hard enough because we were right here. We've been in this county for 3 years. If you'd looked hard enough, if you'd cared enough, we wouldn't have. Her voice broke. We wouldn't have ended up with him. The weight of that statement hung in the air. Mason's face was carved with guilt. Brennan. He said he was helping. He said he'd protect us from the cartel. He said, Mama's hands twisted in the sheets. It doesn't matter what he said. It's what he did. And you weren't there to stop it. You're right, Mason said simply. I wasn't. I failed Caleb. I failed you. I failed Emmett. There's nothing I can say that makes that okay. Mama looked at him for a long moment, searching his face for lies or excuses, finding only raw honesty. So why are you here now? She asked finally. Because I found you and I'm not failing again. I don't want your charity. It's not charity, it's a debt. Caleb saved my life. I owe him everything, which means I owe you and Emmett everything. And I'm going to pay that debt whether you want me to or not. Well, that's not how debts work. It is when they're this important. Mama closed her eyes, exhausted. I can't do this right now. I can't think. Dr. Reeves stepped in gently. Mrs. Harper, you need to rest. These conversations can wait until you're stronger. No, Mama opened her eyes. No, I need to know. Where's Brennan? Ms. Banks appeared beside Mason. He's on administrative leave, under investigation. There's a no-contact order. He can't come near you or Emmett. That doesn't matter. Orders don't stop him. He's a deputy. He does what he wants. Not anymore, Judge Aldridge said, entering the room like she'd been waiting for exactly this moment. Mrs. Harper, I'm Judge Catherine Aldridge. I've been handling your son's case. Deputy Brennan has been charged with multiple crimes, including the assault and abuse of authority. He's being monitored. If he comes near you or Emmett, he will be arrested immediately. Mama laughed bitter and hollow. You don't know him. You don't know what he's capable of. No, Judge Aldridge agreed, but I know what the law is capable of when it's actually enforced. And I know what a protective order means when it's backed by state police instead of a sheriff who's been covering for his deputy for years. Mama's breath caught. The sheriff knew. The sheriff protected him. Multiple complaints buried. Multiple settlements paid quietly. But that ended when your case came to light. Judge Aldridge pulled a chair beside the bed. Mrs. Harper, Rachel, you and your son are the reason we're finally holding Brennan accountable. Your courage to survive, Emmett's courage to ask for help, Mason's courage to call authorities despite not having legal standing, all of it matters. All of it led to this. It doesn't feel like courage, Mama whispered. It feels like barely staying alive. That's what courage is sometimes, not dramatic gestures, just surviving one more day. Mama looked at Emmett, really looked at him for the first time since waking. Baby, are you okay? Did he hurt you? No, Mama, I'm okay. Did I? She swallowed hard. Did I scare you when I got sick? Yes. The honesty made her flinch. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Emmett. I should have gone to the hospital sooner. I should have asked for help. You were scared. I was scared, she agreed. And that's not an excuse, but it's the truth. Mason says Daddy made him promise to take care of us. Mama's eyes went to Mason sharp with old pain. Caleb made a lot of promises. He promised me he'd come home that night. I know, Mason said quietly, and he tried. He died trying. I know that too. Mama's voice cracked. I'm not angry at Caleb. I'm angry that I've spent 6 years being terrified when I should have been able to trust the people who were supposed to help. I'm angry that wearing a badge meant Brennan could do whatever he wanted. I'm angry that asking for help felt more dangerous than dying alone. You have a right to be angry, Judge Aldridge said. What happened to you was a systematic failure of protection, but it's being corrected now. Not fast enough, not perfectly, but it is being corrected. Mama wiped her eyes. What happens now? Now you heal. The hospital's arranging financial assistance for your bills. When you're well enough to be discharged, we'll find you safe housing, not a motel somewhere secure where Brennan can't find you even if he tries. Emmett will stay with you under child services supervision until we're confident you're both stable. And Mason will... Judge Aldridge looked at him. Mason will be available as support if you want it. I don't know if I want it, Mama said honestly. That's fair, Mason replied. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm just asking you to let me try to earn it back. Mama studied him for a long moment. Then she looked at Emmett. What do you want, baby? Do you want Mason around? Emmett thought about the soup, about the motorcycles staying all night, about the way Mason had looked at him when he learned the truth, like finding something precious he thought was lost forever. Yes, Emmett said. He kept his promise to Daddy, even if it took a long time. Mama's eyes filled again. Okay, she whispered. Okay. 3 weeks later, on a morning that smelled like autumn and new beginnings, Emmett and Mama moved into a small house on the edge of town. Not fancy 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with appliances that worked, a yard with grass that needed mowing. But it was theirs, paid for by a victim's assistance fund, Judge Aldridge had helped them access, and it had locks that actually locked and windows that actually closed, and no one would come through the door without permission. Mason helped them move in along with Dakota and a half dozen other bikers who carried boxes and furniture without complaint. The motorcycles lined the street like a temporary barrier between the house and the world, and neighbors peeked through curtains trying to decide if this was a threat or a promise of safety. It was both. Everything was both now. Emmett unpacked his room, which wasn't hard since he didn't have much, and found the crumpled soup bag at the bottom of a box. He'd kept it. Didn't know why. It was just trash. But it felt important somehow, this paper bag that represented the exact moment his life had split into, before and after. He smoothed it out carefully and set it on his dresser. Mama appeared in the doorway looking healthier than Emmett had seen her in years. The fever was gone. The weight was coming back. She moved without pain now, without the constant hunch of someone expecting to be hit. "You keeping that?" she asked, nodding at the bag. "Yeah." "Why, Bob?" "Because it reminds me that asking for help was the right thing to do." Mama's eyes softened. She sat on the edge of his bed. "I'm sorry I taught you not to ask. I'm sorry I made you think we had to do everything alone. You were protecting me. I was scared. There's a difference." She reached out, tucked his hair behind his ear. "Emmett Elijah, do you want me to call you by your real name?" Emmett thought about it. Elijah was who he'd been before when Daddy was alive, and the world was safer. Emmett was who he'd become in hiding. "Can I be both?" he asked. "Yeah, baby, you can be both." Downstairs, voices drifted up, Mason and Dakota helping Mama set up the kitchen, talking about normal things like where the dishes should go and whether they needed more towels. Normal things, like they were normal people living normal lives instead of survivors stitching themselves back together. "Mama," Emmett said, "do you think Deputy Brennan will come back?" She didn't lie to him, didn't promise he wouldn't, just said if he does, we call 911 immediately. And Mason's people will be here in minutes. And Judge Aldridge will make sure he's arrested. "You're not alone this time, baby. None of us are." "Are you scared?" "Every day, but less than I was, and that's something." They sat together in his new room in his new house, listening to the sound of people who cared about them, making a home feel like one. It wasn't perfect. Mama still flinched at sudden noises. Emmett still had nightmares. They both locked doors twice and checked windows before bed, but they were healing, slowly, together. The trial came 4 months later. The prosecution moved fast, multiple victims, clear evidence, state pressure. What normally took years happened in months. Brennan's lawyer tried to delay, but Judge Aldridge pushed every deadline, prioritized every motion. "Justice delayed was justice denied," she said. And she meant it. Deputy Hale Brennan stood in court wearing a suit instead of a uniform, looking smaller somehow, without the badge. 3 other women testified before Emmett, their voices shaking, but determined, telling stories that sounded horrifyingly familiar. Control disguised as care, violence disguised as protection, abuse disguised as love. When it was Emmett's turn, he walked to the witness stand with Mama in the front row and Mason beside her. He was still only 6, almost 7 now, but he'd learned that being small didn't mean being powerless. The prosecutor, a woman with kind eyes and a voice like steel, asked him questions. Where did he live? Who took care of him? Did he know Deputy Brennan? Yes, ma'am. How did you know him? He said he was helping my mama, but he hurt her. How did he hurt her? He squeezed her arms until she had bruises. He made her cry. He said if she told anyone he'd take me away. Did that scare you? Yes, ma'am. Why was I in? Because he meant it, and because nobody stopped him. He had a badge, so people believed him instead of Mama. The prosecutor showed him photos. Do you recognize these bruises? Emmett looked at the pictures of Mama's arms, her wrists, the fingerprints pressed into her skin. Yes, ma'am, I saw those. What did Deputy Brennan say about them? He said Mama was clumsy, that she hurt herself, but I saw him grab her. I know what happened. Brennan's lawyer objected, child witness, unreliable memory, leading questions. Judge Aldridge overruled everyone. Did Deputy Brennan ever hurt you? The prosecutor asked. He grabbed my shoulder hard. He locked me in the motel room. He told me if I was bad, Mama would get sicker. Did you believe him? Yes, ma'am. I thought if I was good enough, he'd stop hurting her. But he never stopped. Emmett looked at Brennan then, really looked at him. The man who'd smiled while causing pain, who'd used his authority to isolate and control, who'd turned a badge into a weapon. Brennan stared back, and for just a second that smile flickered the one that had fooled so many people into thinking he was safe. It didn't work anymore. He said he was protecting us, Emmett told the court. But you don't protect people by making them scared. You protect them by making them safe. He never made us safe. The jury deliberated for 3 hours, guilty on all counts. When the verdict was read, Mama sobbed with relief in Mason's arms. Emmett just felt tired. Justice was supposed to feel triumphant, but mostly it felt like the end of a very long fight that shouldn't have been necessary in the first place. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with cameras and questions. Mason shielded them, Dakota running interference, getting them to the truck before anyone could shove a microphone in Emmett's face. But one reporter called out a question that stopped Emmett cold. Emmett, what do you want people to know about what happened? Emmett turned, looked at the camera, and thought about all the kids who might be watching someday. Kids in motels with sick parents and no money. Kids who'd learned to be small and quiet and not ask for help. I want them to know that asking for help is brave, he said. Even when you're scared. Even when the person hurting you has a badge or seems important. You still ask, because somebody good might hear you. Who heard you? Emmett looked back at Mason standing by the truck with that same expression from the diner, bait and determined and refusing to leave. Strangers who became family, Emmett said. That's who. 6 months after the trial, on a spring morning that smelled like rain and promises kept, Emmett walked back into Grady's Corner Diner. The bell chimed. Jolene looked up from the counter, and her face transformed with recognition and joy. Emmett Harper. Look at you, baby. You got so big. Emmett smiled. He had grown 2 inches and 10 pounds, the kind of growth that happens when you're finally eating regular meals and sleeping without nightmares every night. Hi, Miss Jolene. What can I get you, sweetheart? Emmett walked to the counter and pulled something from his pocket. $1.37. The same coins from that first day kept safe all these months. He placed them carefully on the counter. I want to buy soup for the next kid who needs it, he said. Not for me, for someone else. Someone who's scared and hungry and doesn't know if asking for help is okay. Jolene's eyes filled with tears. Oh, baby. And I want you to keep this money right here where everyone can see it, so they know that asking is okay, that people help. Jolene picked up the coins with shaking hands, then grabbed a small glass jar from under the counter. She dropped the coins inside, then pulled a label maker from a drawer and typed carefully. She stuck the label on the jar for the next kid who needs soup. There, she said, right here on the counter. Forever. The door opened. Mason walked in with Mama, both of them, healthier, steadier, learning how to be something other than haunted. The bikers who'd stayed that first night filtered in too, not 77 this time, just a dozen enough to fill a few booths and make Jolene smile. They weren't there to intimidate. They were there to celebrate. Because Emmett wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living. And Mama wasn't just hiding anymore. She was healing. And Mason wasn't just carrying guilt anymore. He was keeping a promise. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but keeping it nonetheless. Jolene brought out soup, big bowls hot and thick on the house because some things mattered more than money. They ate together, this makeshift family built from tragedy and stubbornness, and one 6-year-old's courage to ask for help when every instinct said not to. And on the counter, the jar sat in the afternoon light, coins glinting, label clear. Waiting. For the next kid who needed to know that asking for help was the bravest thing you could do. For the next stranger who needed to remember that being good meant showing up and staying even when it cost you something. For the next broken promise that might still be kept just differently than planned. Emmett looked at the bus and thought about Daddy, who he'd never really known, but who'd loved him enough to make Mason promise. About Mama, who'd done her best in an impossible situation. About Mason, who'd failed and tried again anyway. About the fact that sometimes justice took time, but still came. That sometimes family was who you found, not who you were born to. That sometimes the smallest acts, buying soup, making a phone call, refusing to look away, changed everything. He was 7 now. Almost. Old enough to understand that the world was complicated and cruel and also occasionally surprisingly kind. Old enough to remember that once upon a time, he'd had $1.37 and didn't know if it was enough. It had been enough, more than enough. It had been everything. The fluorescent lights of Riverside High flickered overhead like dying stars. Tyler Brennan had learned to navigate these hallways the way a ghost navigates the living world present, but unseen occupying space without claiming it. He kept his eyes down, his shoulders hunched, his entire body language screaming, "Don't notice me," to anyone who might be looking. Most days it worked. Today wasn't most days. Cade Morrison stood by the lockers with his crew, all Letterman jackets and entitled smirks, scanning the hallway for entertainment. Tyler recognized the look. Predators wore it when they were bored and hungry. Tyler shifted his backpack, a Goodwill special with duct tape holding the straps together, and calculated the distance to the side exit. 30 feet, 29, 28. "Hey, Brennan." Tyler's stomach dropped. He kept walking, pretending he hadn't heard. "I'm talking to you, scholarship boy." The hallway went quiet. That particular kind of silence that meant everyone was watching, waiting to see if blood would be spilled before first period. Tyler stopped, turned, kept his face neutral. Yeah, Cade pushed off the lockers, his three shadows following. Jake, Connor, Brett. Interchangeable parts of the same bully machine that had made Tyler's life hell for 2 years. "You got lunch money?" Cade's smile didn't reach his eyes. "No." "That's funny, because I could swear I saw you with a $5 bill yesterday." Tyler's jaw tightened. That $5 had been for 3 days of meals. He'd already spent it. $2.47 at Old Joe's Diner. Fries and a water cup he'd fill with Sprite when Joe wasn't looking. The rest he'd save for tomorrow. "Spent it," Tyler said. "On what?" Those Cade gestured at Tyler's sneakers. The sole on the left one flapped when he walked, held together with super glue and hope. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Tyler felt his face burn. "We're done here," he said, turning away. Cade's hand clamped onto his shoulder, spinning him back. "We're done when I say we're done." Tyler knew what came next. The shove into the lockers, the contents of his backpack dumped on the floor. Maybe a swirly if Cade was feeling particularly creative. It was a script they'd performed dozens of times. But before Cade could make his move, a voice cut through the tension like a knife through silk. "Leave him alone." Everyone turned. Rachel Valentine stood 10 feet away, books clutched to her chest, her expression carved from ice. She'd transferred to Riverside 3 weeks ago, and in that time she'd spoken to exactly no one. She ate lunch alone, walked the halls alone, existed in her own orbit, untouchable and untouched. Until now. Cade blinked, recalibrating. "This doesn't concern you. I'm making it concern me. Listen, new girl." Rachel. Her gray eyes were chips of flint. "My name is Rachel, and I said leave him alone." The hallway held its breath. Tyler stood frozen, caught between humiliation and something else he couldn't quite name. No one had ever stood up for him before. No one. Cade looked Rachel up and down, his smile turning predatory. "You know what, fine. Today's your lucky day, Brennan." He stepped back, hands raised in mock surrender. "But we're not done." They never were. As Cade and his crew swaggered away, Rachel met Tyler's eyes for the first time. Really met them. 3 seconds of connection that felt like lightning striking. "Thank you," Tyler managed. She nodded once, then walked away, her dark hair swinging behind her like a curtain falling on a stage. Tyler stood there for a long moment, his heart doing strange things in his chest before the bell rang, and the hallway erupted into motion, swallowing him back into invisibility. The rest of the day passed in the usual blur of classes Tyler couldn't afford to fail and conversations he wasn't part of. By 3:15, when the final bell released him from academic purgatory, Tyler felt the familiar pull toward Old Joe's Diner. It wasn't much. A greasy spoon on the corner of Riverside and 12th with cracked vinyl booths, and a jukebox that only played songs from the 70s. But it was warm, and Joe didn't kick you out if you made a plate of fries last 2 hours, and the corner booth by the emergency exit had become Tyler's unofficial office. He walked the 8 blocks from school, hands shoved in his jacket pockets, watching the neighborhood shift from suburban sprawl to urban decay. Riverside High sat in the good part of town, where lawns were mowed and cars were new. Tyler's apartment building sat in the part where sirens were background music and gunshots were punctuation marks. The transition happened gradually. Clean streets gave way to cracked sidewalks. Boutique coffee shops became liquor stores with bars on the windows. By the time Tyler reached Old Joe's, he was home in the only way that mattered. This was his world, and he knew how to survive it. The diner's bell chimed as he pushed through the door. Joe, a barrel-chested man in his 60s with forearms like hams, looked up from the register. "Usual spot's open," Joe grunted. "Thanks." Tyler slid into the corner booth, the one with the rip in the vinyl that leaked yellow foam, and pulled out his calculus homework. Mrs. Chen had assigned 30 problems. Tyler had understood maybe 5 of them, but he'd worked through all 30 anyway because failing wasn't an option. His scholarship depended on maintaining a 3.5 GPA. His future depended on that scholarship. Freeze Joe appeared tableside, order pad ready. "Yeah, small and water." Joe's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "You eat anything else today, kid?" Tyler thought about the granola bar he'd split with Nana Claire for breakfast. "I'm good." Joe grunted again, but Tyler saw him scribble something extra on the pad. 10 minutes later, when the fries arrived, there were more than usual, maybe double, and they came with a side of coleslaw Tyler hadn't ordered. "On the house," Joe said before Tyler could protest. "Got extra. Gonna go bad anyway." It was a lie they both pretended to believe. "Thanks, Joe." Tyler ate slowly, making it last, working through the calculus problems between bites. He was on problem 12 when the bell chimed again. Rachel Valentine walked in. Tyler's pencil stopped mid-equation. He watched her scan the diner, her gaze methodical, assessing. She clocked the exits: a front door, kitchen emergency door, by Tyler's booth. Her eyes lingered on that last one for a fraction of a second longer than normal, and Tyler noticed the way she evaluated angles, sight lines, escape routes. It wasn't the behavior of a normal teenage girl. It was tactical, trained. Then she walked to the window booth and sat down, her back to the wall facing the street. Tyler stared at his homework, but the numbers had stopped making sense. Why was she here? This wasn't the kind of place girls like Rachel came to. This was for kids like him. Kids who counted pennies and made fries into dinner. Rachel pulled out a textbook, calculus, same as his, in a notebook. When Joe came over, she ordered a Cobb salad and unsweetened iced tea, the kind of order that cost $12. She didn't even blink. Tyler went back to his homework, hyper-aware of her presence 10 feet away. He snuck glances when he thought she wasn't looking. Watch the way she chewed her bottom lip when she was concentrating. The way her fingers drummed against the table in some unconscious rhythm. The way she kept checking her phone like she was expecting a call that never came. She looked lonely. Tyler understood lonely. An hour passed. Rachel barely touched her salad. Tyler made his fries last as long as humanly possible. The October sun sank lower, painting the diner in shades of gold and amber. That's when Tyler noticed the car. A Dodge Charger, gunmetal gray, rolled past the front window. Slow, deliberate, the kind of slow that meant the driver was looking for something. Tyler frowned. Something about it felt wrong. Off, like a note played out of tune in a familiar song. He went back to his homework, but his attention was split now, half on derivatives, half on the street outside. 5 minutes later, the Charger came back. Same car, same slow cruise past the window. Tyler could see the driver this time. Male baseball cap, pulled low sunglasses, even though the sun was setting. Tyler's stomach tightened. That instinct, the one he'd developed growing up in neighborhoods where being aware kept you alive, started whispering, "Wrong. This is wrong." He glanced at Rachel. She'd stopped working on her calculus. Her posture had changed, straighter, more alert. Her eyes tracked the car as it passed. She'd noticed too. For a brief moment, their eyes met. A flash of recognition passed between them. They both knew something was wrong. The Charger disappeared around the corner. Tyler tried to focus on problem 17, but his knee was bouncing now, adrenaline starting to trickle into his bloodstream for reasons he couldn't articulate. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe he was paranoid. Maybe the Charger appeared a third time. This time it didn't pass. It slowed to a crawl directly in front of the diner. The passenger window rolled down with mechanical precision. Tyler's brain screamed danger before his conscious mind could process why. He saw the arm emerge from the window, saw the gun black and brutal and wrong, saw the barrel swing toward Rachel's booth like a compass finding north. Time fragmented into heartbeats. Tyler didn't think. Thinking took time, and time was the one thing he didn't have. He moved. Get down! The words tore from his throat as his legs propelled him out of the booth. 3 strides. 12 feet between his corner and Rachel's window seat. 12 feet between life and death. Rachel looked up, her eyes meeting his. In that split second, Tyler saw her hand move toward her bag, trained response, reaching for something, but there was no time. Tyler hit her like a freight train, his shoulder driving into her chest, his arms wrapping around her waist, his momentum carrying them both backward. The chair toppled. They crashed to the floor in a tangle of limbs and terror. But even as they fell, Rachel was moving too. Her hand grabbed Tyler's shoulder, pulling him down harder, her other arm coming up to protect his head. She'd seen the gun too, was trying to shield him even as he shielded her. Tyler twisted as they fell, making sure his back faced the window, making sure his body covered hers completely. The world exploded. The automatic weapon fire was deafening. Glass became razor rain, each shard catching the dying sunlight as it filled the air. Wood splintered. Vinyl erupted. The smell of gunpowder mixed with fryer grease and teenage fear. Something punched through Tyler's left shoulder blade. Hot. Burning. Like being branded with a white-hot iron. Then again lower near his spine. The second bullet hit with enough force to drive the air from his lungs. Fire. Pure liquid fire flooding his back. His lungs couldn't find air. His vision started to tunnel. But beneath him, warm and alive and trembling, Rachel was screaming. Screaming meant alive. Alive meant he'd done it right. Around them, Old Joe's had transformed into chaos. People were diving under tables, scrambling for exits. Someone was shouting about calling 911. The jukebox had been hit, spurting sparks and dying mid-song. Tyler tried to hold on, tried to stay conscious, but darkness was creeping in from the edges of his vision, like ink spreading through water. Don't move. Rachel's voice cut through the ringing in his ears, sharp and commanding, despite the tears streaming down her face. Oh God, don't move. There's so much blood.